Have you ever just stopped and wondered why our world looks the way it does? Why human history played out so differently across the globe. Why some societies ended up with huge empires, steel swords and guns, while others just didn't. Well, today, we're going to dive into a really powerful theory that tries to explain these massive differences. This is one of the biggest questions you can ask about human history, right? For centuries, people have come up with all sorts of answers. But the idea we're exploring today is pretty radical. It asks, what if the answer has nothing to do with the people themselves?
And the key to unlocking this mystery, according to Jared Diamond's incredible book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, is that the modern world wasn't really shaped by things like culture or intelligence. Nope. It was forged by something a lot more random.
At its heart, the whole argument boils down to one powerful idea. Geography is destiny. The raw materials, the climate, the sheer environmental conditions of a continent, that's what set the pace for how societies developed. So, the idea is that some groups of people got this huge, unearned advantage just because of where their ancestors happened to live. You could say they basically won a geographical lottery thousands and thousands of years ago. So, what exactly was the grand prize in this lottery? According to Diamond, the single biggest prize you could win was access to large domesticable animals. This was the one factor that kicked off this incredible chain reaction, a chain that leads directly to the guns, germs, and steel of the title. And what's just mind-blowing is how incredibly rare these animals were. Out of thousands of wild mammal species on Earth, only a tiny, tiny handful had what it takes. To be domesticated, an animal had to have the right diet, grow up fast, have a pretty calm personality, and be willing to breed in captivity. Only 14 species on the entire planet fit that description. Just 14.
And this table, wow, it just lays it all out. The imbalance is staggering. Eurasia was home to 13 of those 14 species. We're talking horses, cows, pigs, sheep, goats, the whole farm. The Americas, they had just one, the llama. Sub-Saharan Africa and Australia, they had 0. This wasn't just a small leg up. It was an absolutely overwhelming, world-shaping advantage.
So why were these animals such a big deal? Well, they were like a complete toolkit for building a civilization. They gave people a reliable source of protein, materials for clothing, and even fertilizer for their crops. They totally changed the game for farming with their muscle power. And of course, animals like the horse became these incredible tools for war, transport, and conquest.
But living so closely with all these animals had another consequence. A much darker, more sinister one that nobody could have seen coming. It turned human settlements into breeding grounds for some of the most lethal diseases in history. As Yuval Noah Harari points out in his book *Sapiens*, horrible diseases like smallpox and measles were basically just mutations of diseases that started in animals. They made the jump from livestock to people.
So, over thousands of years, people in Eurasia got hit by these plagues over and over. It was awful, but the survivors slowly built up genetic resistance. Meanwhile, in places like the Americas and Australia, where there were no animals like these, people had no such immunities. So when Europeans arrived, they brought this deadly gift with them. The results, as we know, were absolutely catastrophic.
Okay, so we have food, we have labor, and we have this terrifying biological weapon. This brings us to the final elements of the puzzle: advanced technology and large-scale political organization.
You can see this powerful chain of cause and effect right here. It all starts with the animals. They make it possible to have a food surplus, which lets people live in dense, settled populations. Those populations become incubators for germs and build immunities, but they also, and this is crucial, support specialists who don't have to be farmers.
Think about it. You just can't develop complex things like metallurgy or writing or big political systems if every single person has to spend all day, every day, just trying to find their next meal. That food surplus, powered by animal agriculture, was the absolute foundation for everything else.
And all of this leads us to the really profound conclusion of Diamond's whole theory. It's a completely different way of looking at the roots of global power and inequality. The biggest takeaway here is that the patterns of wealth and power we see today aren't because of some innate differences between people. Instead, they're more like a long-term echo of an ancient environmental lottery, one that gave some societies a head start of thousands of years.
And that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. If the broad strokes of history were shaped so heavily by sheer luck and geography, what does that mean for how we think about things like success
and merit and destiny in the world today.